I'd like to read you from Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, if I can find it here. It says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Some of you guys may know I have a shop and I have a business and we fix things at my business. And it's not uncommon for one of my mechanics to walk in and see me on the floor with my tools scattered around me, fixing something in front of me, usually a chainsaw or something small, where I've got lots of nice tables and countertops and stuff where I can do my work up there. But sometimes I'm on the floor and he looks at me and he says, "Oh, it's going to be one of those days, is it?" Because sometimes things we try to do, we'll go through and everything we touch will turn to gold. Everything is easy, it's quick, it's fast, and then some days everything we touch, well, we don't use the following word, but just say it turns to garbage. And those are some rough days. And then some days everything we touch just ends up on the floor. And the way we deal with it is, well, when things are golden, we try to fix as many things as we possibly can while things are going good. And when things are garbage, well, we try to back up and wrap those up and kind of set them aside and come back at them at another time, maybe when things are going a little better. And when things are greasy, when things are on the floor, I know everybody here has picked up something, and every time you touch something, it falls on the floor, and it just falls on the floor. And we just get to the point where it's easier to be on the floor because that's where all my parts and all my tools are going to be. So I might as well be right there with them. They're easier to reach. I don't have to bend over but once. And so we'll deal with the greasy stuff in that manner. Well, I started thinking, it's all about perseverance, and it's all about how you approach things when things are not going bad. As Christians, when things are golden, when things are good, it's easy. It's easy to be a Christian. It's easy to worship God when everyone around you is worshiping God. It's easy to worship, to praise the Lord when everyone around you is praising the Lord. But that's not always the case, and sometimes it's hard to be a Christian. And sometimes we have to take a step back, and we might have to take a different approach. We might have to not run down Main Street with our big Christian flag waving. We might have to, run down 2nd Street with a small Christian flag waving. We might have to do things, and so that we would not normally do. We still want to praise God. We still want to spread His word, but we might not be able to do it. We're not all of that. I'm not cut out to be a martyr. I don't want to die for my cause. I want to live for my cause. And so when things get to be too much, sometimes we have to back up and kind of take a different approach. But we always have to remain optimistic. And I talk about I'm going to use the 3 G's now. Karen came up with this. I thought that was brilliant. Gold, garbage, or greasy. And when things are golden, things are wonderful. But when things are garbage and things are greasy, we have to take a different approach, and we have to remain optimistic. Because when things are golden, it's easy to be optimistic. When things are garbage, it's easy to be pessimistic. And when things are greasy, well, it's easy to be realistic. And so let's try to be optimistic. Let's try to look for those golden times when they're not so golden. And I want to tell you about a story about this guy's life. Fantastic guy. His name is Horatio G. Spafford. And he wrote our opening hymn today. He wrote "It Is Well With My Soul." He was an attorney in Chicago just post-Civil War times. As an attorney, life was golden for him. He had lots of money. He made lots of investments. He bought lots of real estate. And then things took a turn for garbage. 1871. Anybody remember there was a little fire happened somewhere around Chicago, 1871? When the town burned, he lost most of his investments. 1873, he decided, let's go on a vacation. He's going to go to Europe. He had a friend that was preaching in Europe in the fall. He said, let's go to Europe and let's go to England and let's go see my friend preach. And let's take the boat over, because that's how they went then. And so just a few days before they were getting ready to leave, he had a case come up and he could not leave. He had to stay behind. He told his wife and his 4 daughters, he said, y'all go ahead, I'll catch the next boat. And so he was going to be coming about a week later. And the boat, the cruise line they were on, came under attack. And it was sunk. And he lost all 4 of his daughters. His wife was among the survivors. And she sent him a telegraph from England to tell him that all was lost save one. And so when he was on the boat going across, he wrote the lyrics to "It Is Well With My Soul," because he had such strong faith in the Lord that he knew that no matter what, he was going to be brought out of this bad situation. And he was a deeply faithful man. And so his wife survived. They came back to the States and they had 3 more children. And at the age of 4, his eldest son died of scarlet fever. Can you even imagine? I am not a parent, but can any of you parents imagine even losing 1 child, not much less 5? Just devastating. And then to top it all off, as Christians, we sometimes aren't very Christian-like. And to top it all off, his church, he was a member of the Presbyterian Church, they claimed that it was divine punishment that he had this happen to him. So they essentially kicked him out of the church. And he formed his own church. He formed a messianic sect called the Overcomers. And they left the United States and they went to Jerusalem. And he invited he established an American colony in Jerusalem, and he invited some other people to come, and there was some people from Switzerland that sent a congregation, and they had this colony, and they were doing all sorts of philanthropic work. They were helping the poor in the area and helping the sick in the area, and they weren't asking people, what religion are you? They weren't asking whether you were Jewish or Muslim or Christian. They were just helping people. And they brought this philanthropic message, and they were not pushing Christianity on anyone. They were not telling anybody, they were telling everybody they were Christian, but they weren't forcing it on them. They were showing them that they were Christians by their love. I love that song, by the way. All right, so he passed away in 1888. After World War I, there was the Eastern Front of World War I essentially left that area just devastated. And it was the same colony that Horatio G. Spafford started years earlier. That same colony in the late 19-teens, early 1920s, that set up hospitals and set up schools and set up places for people to live, set up community houses for people to live, to bring that area back up and to bring it. And so I look at us, and we have rough days. I know we all have rough days. Some of us have days that are rougher than others. Some of us may come down with cancer. Some of us may come down with even more serious illnesses than that. But we have to persevere. We have to continue, because God is not done with us. He wants us to continue. He wants us to continue to do His will here on this earth so that we can have our reward when we get to see Him again. And we don't know what good we do today is going to do, what good is going to become of it in the future. But God does. And He knows that we're going to do something today and something tomorrow and something the next day. It might be a word of encouragement. It might be starting a charity. It might just be throwing a few coins in a bucket to buy some llamas and sheep for somebody in a country that you've never possibly even heard of. But those good things that we do will become good things in the future. I talk about perseverance, and I want to bring Max into this just ever so briefly, because how long have you been working on your book, Max? Has it been 3 decades yet?
No, it's been
12 years. 12 years he's been working on this book. And it will be wonderful when it comes out. But he's got the perseverance, and I know he's going to do it, and I know it's going to come out, and I know it's going to be wonderful. And so everybody has to persevere. Let me switch over to someone who was an atheist. Well, I say atheist. Thomas Edison claimed to not be an atheist, but he claimed to also not worship the God that the theologians did. So from a theological standpoint, he was an atheist. But he was a perseverer. He knew how to, he never gave up. He took an idea. There was a competition essentially to invent the light, to create the perfect light bulb, or at least the light bulb that would work. And he took an idea and he made thousands and thousands and thousands of attempts and revisions on this one idea that took him years to do. And it became our incandescent light bulb. They're all around us. Essentially the same design that he came up with just post-Civil War, if I remember right. Yeah, 1879. That we're still using today. Now, today's technology is changing, and we're going over to fluorescence and LEDs and all sorts of different things. But the design is essentially the same that he came up with, well over 100 years ago. He was a prolific inventor, but every idea wasn't, instant. It took him years to develop all these products. And then we come to Paul. And Paul was a serious. Paul had serious perseverance. I have to keep from saying perseverer again. Paul had serious perseverance. In Bible study, we study a lot of the stuff that Paul has written. And Paul's ministry was very short. It was only about 30 years. And he brought the gospel to people on foot. And it says that he spent more than 14,000 miles bringing the gospel to people, mostly on foot. In a period of 2.5 years, he brought the gospel to all of Asia Minor. That's a big place to do that in 2.5 years. This is from the guy that was, all right, I got my notes here, was beaten 3 times by the Romans. Now, Paul was a Roman citizen. Because he was a Roman citizen, it was illegal for the Romans to beat him. It didn't stop him. They beat him anyway. He was whipped 5 times by the Jews. He was stoned. There are some accounts that say he was stoned to death once and brought back. Shipwrecked 3 separate times, jailed twice, I think. Yeah. Wrote some of his best letters from jail. But Paul had charged himself with making sure that the church survived, that the church persevered. He wanted the church to continue because he knew that there were such great things that God was going to do through the church and through him. And he would see things that were going wrong. He would see guys living with their former stepmothers, and he would say, "That's not right." And they would go, "Oh, no, it's okay. No, really, that's not right." And he would make them stop. But we all knew, and he all knew that it was all to continue, all to bring God and bring it to the world. And he knew that as long as he continued, that God would direct him, and God would keep him persevering, and God would bring him through it. Because God doesn't promise us an easy life. I'd love to say that everything we live is going to be golden. but it's not. And there's going to be times when there's garbage in our life. And there's going to be times when there's grease in our life, and we have to learn to wash our hands and try to get a better grasp on things. And we're going to have to learn when things are not going right. The saying goes, when you dug your hole and you can't get out of it, well, you should stop digging. You have to back up, and you have to reassess and look and see where you've got to go and where's God going to take you. And it's like, okay, God will take us where we ask Him to take us, but we have to ask Him, and we have to communicate, and we have to listen. And that's always been my biggest weakness. God talks to me, but He doesn't use verbal words. He uses actions. And I'm not always real good with seeing the actions when they're happening. It's usually months later. I was like, oh, yeah, hey, look, He was doing that in my life right there. And I go back and I see it, and it's obvious to me, just not when it happens. So we have to ask Him, and we have to have the faith. What was the words? We have to have the faith that every day and every hour that He will give us power. The words from our anthem today says, trust and never doubt. Jesus will surely bring you out, because He's never failed me yet. My sermon today is short and sweet, but it's all about asking God to continue to give you strength and to bring you through the adversity. And when the times are golden, remember who got you there, and remember who will get you through there. So pray with me if you would. Most merciful, gracious Lord, some days are easy. Some days are hard. Some days are just slippery. We ask that you strengthen our grip when we slip, that you ease our burden when we struggle. And please, please remind us to give you the glory on those golden days. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you so much, Jim.